Greetings, I'm your host, Dr. Wolfula, and welcome to another entry of Wolfula Chat, where I discuss the latest shit happening in the world of horror. I'm joined by a guest, my zombie servant, Ghoulash. Oh, hey, Ghoulash here. You know, Ghoulash, I like to think of myself as the Mr. Rourke around these parts. My fans are my guests, and I make their wildest fantasies come true. Their wildest fantasies are horror movie reviews? Yeah, and the occasional Scooby-Doo video, too. I suppose that would make you Tattoo, my faithful servant in that case. Of course, there's a bit of a height difference there, but nothing some unnecessary surgery can't resolve. Okay, why are you referencing Fantasy Island all of a sudden? Because, silly Billy, we're reviewing the new Fantasy Island film. Wait, we're seriously reviewing that film? I thought us watching that movie was like a joke or a prank on me or something. Nope, I was being totally serious. Fantasy Island is Blumhouse's latest effort to acquire the rights to any intellectual property available in order to make a quick, cheap, forgettable horror film to fill the gap during the least busy movie-going months of the year. It feels like Blumhouse has taken its successes in the horror genre in recent years too far. The company seems to just want a monopoly on horror film franchises, grasping at whatever they can, and in this case, it's a ludicrous example. Yeah, they basically took Fantasy Island, a random show that was popular in the 70s, and turned it into a horror film because I guess the Malcolm McDowell Fantasy Island reboot in the 90s didn't pan out, and this is the only way to turn a profit off this brand. The only reason why this isn't completely out of left field is because of that fucking piece of shit Banana Splits horror movie. Stuff just can't die. Every old show and movie that anyone can vaguely remember will be brought back and remixed to some kind of abomination that can generate a meager profit. I do have to hand it to Blumhouse. They've proven in recent years to the rest of Hollywood that there's still plenty of coke money left to be made in making horror movies. Also, horror movies based on shows you can only watch on MeTV. We truly are living in a nightmare reality. Yeah, pretty much. Anyway, the plot of Blumhouse's Fantasy Island follows a group of 5 relative strangers who have won an ambiguous contest that has brought them to the titular island where they will live out their fantasies of choice, arranged by Mr. Rourke, played by Michael Pena.
Let me officially welcome you to Fantasy Island.
We were all just discussing how this works exactly.
You will know soon enough, and I promise you will not be disappointed.
I gotta say right off the bat, Michael Pena as Mr. Rourke doesn't really work. It feels like they casted the most famous Latino actor that they could afford on their budget, but he just doesn't have the same level of charisma as Ricardo Montalban. It's impossible to replicate Montalban's performance, but you need to have this larger-than-life figure at the center of your Fantasy Island thing for it to work. Michael Pena in the whole film just feels so low-key and always seems to just recede in the background of scenes, like he'd rather not be featured prominently in the movie because it would hurt his career. All the posters of this movie just show islands shaped like scary things. It doesn't seem like Blumhouse actually has the balls to sell this movie as a scary version of Fantasy Island. They don't leverage any of the iconic aspects of the franchise in their marketing. You wouldn't know it was a Fantasy Island film without the names, which I guess is good because that means the TV series' legacy can hopefully come out of this unscathed. As for Tattoo in this film, he is actually in this movie, but it's a spoiler we'll discuss later. Suffice to say, it's an extremely stupid version of the character. Supremely stupid. The plot for most of the film is split up into 4 distinct story threads exploring the fantasies of the 5 characters. It's a nightmare of tedium to follow these 4 plots. If there were 3, maybe it would work, but it's just so annoying jumping between 4 distinct stories like this is an anthology film where the different stories are running parallel with each other. Eventually, the 4 stories converge with each other, but leading up to it, you just can't really get attached to these characters when you're constantly shifting between their stories that are tonally very different. It's so fucking frustrating to sit through, especially since the characters themselves are so one-dimensional and superficial. You just want to see them all die, and spoiler alert, most of them survive this fucking film. These are not the kind of characters you need to be precious with. Let's break down the stories a bit, but I don't want to spend too much time on it.
Obviously, the fantasy won't be real, but that's why we go to horror movies and ride roller coasters, right?
Now, much like the original series, these characters experience fantasies created supernaturally, their greatest desires realized, but the catch is that they have to see their fantasies through to their natural conclusion, which in this case has some dark, unforeseen twist. It's basically the monkey's paw, where the wishes blow up in the characters' faces, sometimes even literally. They fucking deserve it, though. All the fantasies in this movie are lame and uncreative.
I will confess, I'm relatively new here, so how Mr. Rourke does what he does is as much a mystery to me as it is to you.
The two stepbrothers' fantasy is to have a rave at a mansion, like that's it. One of the other dudes wants to have the experience of a soldier, like he can't get that just from playing paintball. The most boring fantasy is Gwen's, who wants a second chance to accept a marriage proposal and have a life with her scorned true love. That fantasy is super dull. The closest thing to a standout is Melanie's fantasy of wanting revenge against a high school bully, who turns out to actually be kidnapped and tortured in front of Melanie. The plot mostly just feels like a bunch of rejected Twilight Zone episodes stapled together. There's of course a bunch of twists to each fantasy that also lead to a bunch of twists in the final act. It's just a mess of twists. I've never seen a movie with so many fucking twists. It's like M. Night Shyamalan jizzed all over the script of this fucking movie. We could spoil 3 of the twists in this film right now. There'd still be like a dozen left that are unspoiled. The only source of joy in the movie is a surprise appearance by Michael Rooker as a survivalist private eye living on the island. I didn't expect him to be in the film at all. I couldn't believe it was him. This seemed like a movie way below him in such a bit role, but he's great. It really makes me wish the movie focused on him. The worst thing about the movie is that it's PG-13 to try to maximize its profits. Oh, it is just egregious how tame this horror film is. The movie will show guys getting shot in the head, and there will be absolutely no blood when it happens. It's just like watching a Marvel movie. The film has the most PG torture scenes I've ever witnessed. It just seems like the characters get cut with butter knives for a few seconds and scream. It's just pathetic. Yeah, there's just no real redeeming qualities. At least a bad horror film might have some cool gore to try to make up for a lousy plot and unexciting horror. But when you're deliberately shooting for PG-13, you can't even manage that.
You must see your fantasy through to its natural conclusion, no matter what.
Well, why wouldn't we?
Because fantasies rarely play out as you or I might expect.
Alright, let's talk spoilers. If you want to avoid them, skip to the time code. There's so much shit to spoil in this movie. It really is ridiculous the number of twists there are, just with the fantasies by themselves. The party boy stepbrothers end up the target of terrorists, the wannabe soldier ends up encountering his dad who died in the line of duty, and Gwen ends up suddenly married to her true love and with a 5-year-old daughter. The reason for these magical fantasies is kept anything but ambiguous. It's explained at length, but even then, it's not really worth dwelling on much. Something having to do with magic water or minerals, it doesn't really matter. All that matters is that the island can conjure sinister magic zombie people that will eventually wreak havoc in the fantasies of all who come to the island, just like in the original series, I think. Mr. Rourke is revealed to have been using the island the whole time just so he could continue to live with his dead wife in a fantasy. At the end, it suddenly becomes like an Indiana Jones movie where the characters have a showdown in some caves. Melanie is revealed to be the true villain of the story, who wishes revenge against all the characters for their responsibility in the death of a character we barely know anything about. She's beaten, though, when one of the characters fantasizes that she gets killed. Only the soldier dude really gets killed in the film when he throws himself on a grenade to save everyone, and it leads to a schmaltzy ending that feels like it could have been in an actual Fantasy Island episode and not a fucking horror movie. One of the party dudes was also killed, but he's brought back to life because his stepbrother fantasizes him being alive. This leads to the final twist of the movie. The Asian party guy has to stay on the island with Mr. Rourke, so his fantasy of his brother living can continue. And as the new servant, the Asian guy has to choose a nickname. The nickname that the guy goes with comes from an ironic tattoo that just says tattoo. It's fucking insanely stupid. This whole Fantasy Island horror movie was just a prequel about how Tattoo got onto the island, but it doesn't explain how he stopped being Asian and became a midget. I don't know why the movie's even bothering trying to be canon to the original series. Yeah, most of the people who will see this movie were born long after the show came out and won't even know it's based on the show. It just seems like a really pointless joke that most of their audience won't even get. Alright, end of spoilers. Fantasy Island is a really bad cash grab, and Blumhouse should be ashamed of itself. Ricardo Montalban and Hervé Villachez are very likely spitting in their graves right now. How would you rate Fantasy Island, sir? I give Fantasy Island a Michael Pena out of Ricardo Montalban. So, what do you folks at home think of the movie? Let us know down in the comments below. You fucking weirdos. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, like it, and if you loved it, subscribe for more and click the bell icon to find out when my latest vids and streams go live. Want a double dose of Dr. Wolfula? Donate to my Patreon and you'll get bonus content for supporting the channel, including exclusive movie streams and commentaries weekly. Be sure to also give me a visit in the free Pop-Ace app to hang out in a virtual Wolfula complete with horror quizzes and bonus vids. Link in the description to download for iOS and Android. I'd like to give a special thanks to my true Wolfulite supporters on Patreon and my channel memberships for their pledges. Their support helps keep the channel going after all these years. Thank you guys. Alrighty, Dr. Wolfula signing out. See you all next time.